Have you ever wondered why the most foolish, arrogant people always end up leading the intelligent ones? Why do the loudest voices rise while the most thoughtful minds are silenced? Why do the shallow gain followers while the wise are ignored? You see it everywhere, in your workplace, in politics, in every system built by human hands. Those who lack depth seem to rise effortlessly, while those who carry true insight stay invisible in the shadows. It feels unfair, doesn't it? It feels like the world is upside down. How can someone so incompetent, so obviously unqualified, sit in positions of power while the capable remain unheard? We like to believe that the world rewards intelligence, integrity, and goodness. But look around you. That's not how power works. Maybe the problem isn't that the world is broken. Maybe it's that we never understood how it truly functions. Centuries ago, Machiavelli saw through this illusion. He wrote about a truth so raw and disturbing that humanity has tried to ignore it ever since. Power does not belong to the most intelligent or even the most moral. It belongs to those who understand how perception controls reality. The ones who manipulate appearances, who act boldly while others hesitate, who understand that people follow confidence, not truth. And that's why fools often rise to power. They are unburdened by reflection, unchained by doubt, and willing to do what the moral hesitates to do. Meanwhile, the wise stay trapped in conscience, waiting for fairness that never comes. But if you stay until the end of this video, I'll show you the disturbing psychology behind this imbalance and how Machiavelli's wisdom can help you see through the illusion so you'll never be manipulated again. Before we begin, hit like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you'll be the first to receive my next awakening video. Now, let's expose the brutal truth about power. Centuries ago, Machiavelli wrote a line that still echoes through history. It is better to be feared than loved, if you cannot be both. For centuries, people have called that phrase cruel, heartless, even evil. But Machiavelli wasn't praising tyranny. He was describing the world as it actually is, not as we wish it to be. He understood something most of us still deny. Power doesn't serve morality. It serves boldness. Look around you. The people who rise to the top are rarely the kindest, the smartest, or the most virtuous. They are the ones who dare to act when others hesitate. They speak louder, move faster, and play the game more ruthlessly. They project certainty even when they're wrong, and that illusion is often all it takes. You've seen them in the workplace. The overconfident, loud, shallow personalities who dominate meetings, take credit for other people's work, and somehow end up leading teams they can barely manage. They know how to perform. They know how to look competent, and in a world that worships appearances, that's enough. Meanwhile, the quiet thinkers, the ones who actually understand what's going on, stay in the background. They analyze, they hesitate, they wait for the world to notice their merit. But the world doesn't notice merit, it notices movement. Machiavelli saw this pattern centuries ago and wrote what most people were too afraid to say. The masses see with their eyes, not their mind. Most people don't want truth, they want certainty. They don't follow wisdom, they follow confidence. And confidence, even if it's built on lies, is magnetic. That's why the foolish rise so easily. They aren't burdened by reflection or guilt. They move quickly because they don't stop to question themselves. Their recklessness looks like courage to those who can't tell the difference. And it's not just politics or business, it's everywhere. On social media, for instance, the loudest voices, not the wisest ones, dominate. People who speak without thinking go viral, not because they're insightful, but because they're simple. They take complex truths and turn them into slogans that feed emotion, not thought. And the crowd rewards them for it. In politics, the same principle applies. The most outrageous statements get the most attention. People confuse boldness for leadership, aggression for strength. And the more ridiculous the claim, the more it spreads, because outrage is the easiest way to control attention. Machiavelli never created this dynamic, he exposed it. He understood that human beings are deeply emotional creatures, pretending to be rational. We like to believe we value logic and truth, but what we really follow is feeling. And that's the uncomfortable truth. Power doesn't belong to those who deserve it. It belongs to those who understand the emotions of the crowd. The foolish rise not because they're geniuses, but because they understand the weakness of those who think they are. The wise, meanwhile, get trapped in their own integrity. They think fairness will prevail, that competence will be recognized, that truth will eventually surface. But it rarely does. History doesn't remember the most virtuous, it remembers the most visible. Every fool in power exists because people allowed them to rise. The masses choose the confident over the capable, the certain over the sincere. As long as humanity remains driven by fear and appearance, the stage will always belong to those who know how to perform. That's the real genius of Machiavelli. He didn't write The Prince to encourage evil. He wrote it to warn you, to show you that if you refuse to understand how power operates, you'll always be ruled by those who do. So when you see the arrogant, the reckless, or the manipulative at the top, don't ask, why them? Ask instead, what do they understand about human nature that others ignore? Because power isn't about intelligence. It's about understanding perception and knowing how to use it. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever watched someone unqualified rise to power? Maybe a boss, a politician, or someone who played the system better than you thought possible? Share your story in the comments. I'll read and respond personally, because every experience you share adds another piece to the truth. Machiavelli tried to show us. If you've ever looked around and wondered how a society that celebrates intelligence can be ruled by ignorance, you're not alone. The answer doesn't lie in politics, it lies in psychology. Carl Jung once said, "The larger the crowd, the more negligible the individual." Sigmund Freud added that when people gather in masses, they regress. They stop thinking as individuals and start reacting as children, driven not by reason, but by emotion, fear, and desire for protection. And that's exactly what the foolish leaders understand, often instinctively. They don't appeal to logic. They appeal to the collective wound of insecurity. They speak in absolutes and simple slogans, in promises that sound like comfort. They become symbols, not of intelligence, but of emotional relief. People don't actually want the truth. They want to feel safe. The crowd doesn't follow those who think. It follows those who promise certainty. And certainty is the oldest form of seduction. This is why foolish, loud, or reckless leaders rise so easily. They mirror the unconscious fears of their followers. They speak to the primal mind, the same part that prefers illusion over reality because illusion feels good. Freud called this the pleasure principle, the human tendency to avoid pain, even at the cost of truth. Think about it. Every time someone offers simple answers to complex problems, the masses gather. Every time a confident fool speaks with conviction, millions listen. But when a wise voice speaks of nuance, patience, or self-responsibility, the world scrolls past. It's not a failure of leadership, it's a failure of perception. Modern democracy hasn't been destroyed by dictatorships. It's being eroded by something quieter, intellectual fatigue. People are tired of thinking. They crave simplicity in a world that's too complex. And that fatigue makes them easy to rule. Machiavelli understood this centuries ago. He wrote, "A wise ruler must appear virtuous, not be virtuous." He knew that image, not integrity, drives obedience. The fool wears confidence like a mask, a persona, as Jung would call it. A carefully crafted performance that hides weakness behind charm, ignorance behind charisma, and manipulation behind smiles. This persona is the modern crown. And those who master it don't need wisdom. They only need timing. Friedrich Nietzsche took this even further. He believed that beneath all our illusions of morality lies one universal law: the will to power. The instinct to dominate, to influence, to control. The fools we see rising are often not fools at all. They're simply unashamed of their will to power. While thinkers debate ethics, they seize the opportunity. While the moralists hesitate, they act. In every era, the same dynamic repeats. The intelligent man doubts, the impulsive one decides. The thinker waits for clarity. The fool moves forward, and in moving, he becomes the leader. But here's the paradox. These so-called fools are not the disease. They're the symptom. They exist because the masses summon them. They rise from the collective shadow of a society that refuses to confront its own ignorance. Jung warned us that whatever we repress, we project. When we reject our own hunger for control, our own hidden arrogance, we end up worshiping it in others. We create the very tyrants we despise. That's why every age gets the leaders it deserves. Because a crowd that refuses to think will always choose the one who does the thinking for them, even if that thinking is madness disguised as strength. So before blaming the fools in power, look deeper. They are not anomalies. They are reflections, mirrors of our collective unconscious, our fear of freedom, and our addiction to certainty. The world doesn't need more intelligent leaders. It needs individuals brave enough to think for themselves, to tolerate uncertainty without handing their autonomy to the loudest voice in the room. Because when the crowd surrenders its mind, the fool doesn't need to steal power. It's given to him willingly. Now tell me, have you seen this pattern in your own life? In your workplace, your country, or even your relationships? Share your story in the comments. I'll read and respond, because every experience you share adds another piece to this uncomfortable truth about human nature. Niccolò Machiavelli was not a cynic. He was a surgeon of power, dissecting the anatomy of manipulation so we could see the machinery behind the illusion. He didn't tell rulers to be evil. He warned them that the world rewards those who understand how to control perception. Because the secret to power has never been truth. It's the management of belief. A fool in power doesn't need intelligence. He needs performance. He learns that the world doesn't judge by reality, but by the appearance of strength. Machiavelli said it clearly, men judge by appearances rather than by reality. All men have eyes, but few have the gift of penetration. And that is the first rule of the foolish in power: control perception. Appear confident when you're unsure. Speak loudly when you're ignorant. Pretend to care when you don't. The masses don't verify. They feel. They follow certainty, not truth. Think about today's world. In politics, the ones who win elections are not those with the most wisdom, but those who look most decisive on a debate stage. In corporations, the ones who climb the fastest are not the most competent, but the ones who can make the boss feel like they're essential. In the media, the loudest outrage earns the most clicks. Perception, not reality, shapes everything. And the fools? They know this game better than anyone. The second rule: exploit fear. When people are afraid, they don't want truth. They want safety. Fear short-circuits logic. A manipulator knows this. He amplifies danger, paints himself as the only protector, and transforms anxiety into loyalty. Only I can fix this, he says. Only I can save you. And suddenly, the crowd kneels, not because they believe, but because they're terrified of being alone. That's how every fragile empire begins, not with a coup, but with a promise. The third rule: hide weakness behind boldness. Most fools in power are terrified of being exposed. But they compensate with aggression. They double down when cornered. They never admit mistakes. And the public, mistaking arrogance for confidence, bows before them. Because society teaches us to equate humility with weakness and dominance with strength. The bold liar will always overshadow the quiet truth-teller. And finally, the fourth rule: use morality as a tool. This is Machiavelli's most uncomfortable insight. The wolf wears the skin of the lamb. The manipulator knows that people long for virtue, so he performs it. He plays the good father, the loyal patriot, the moral leader. He speaks of justice while plotting deceit. He weaponizes goodness itself. The crowd doesn't notice, because people prefer to believe they are ruled by the righteous, not the ruthless. And so the cycle continues. The fool pretends to be virtuous, the wise hesitate to challenge him, and the world applauds the mask. But make no mistake, these tactics aren't relics of Renaissance Italy. They live everywhere. In the corporate office, where the charismatic liar outshines the quiet worker. In the influencer who preaches authenticity while selling illusions. In the relationship where one partner controls through guilt and victimhood. The formula never changes, only the costumes do, because power is psychological before it is political. It doesn't begin in the palace, it begins in perception. And here lies Machiavelli's final warning. You don't have to be cruel to gain power, but you must understand cruelty, or it will be used against you. If you remain naive, you become prey. If you refuse to see the manipulation, you feed it. If you hide behind morality without strategy, you will always be ruled by those who weaponize both. So the next time you ask why the foolish rise, while the wise remain invisible, remember this. Power is not a reflection of intelligence. It is a mirror of human weakness. And those who study that weakness rule it. Tell me in the comments, have you ever seen this play out? A boss, a friend, a leader who rose not because they were good, but because they knew how to look good. Share your experience below. I'll read your story, because these are the patterns we must expose to break free from them. The question isn't why fools rule the world. The real question is, why do the wise stay silent? Think about it. All throughout history, intelligence has been quiet. The thinkers, the visionaries, the sensitive ones, they stand back, they observe, they analyze. They see the corruption, they understand it, but they hesitate. They wait for the truth to somehow speak for itself. But truth without a voice is powerless. And silence, no matter how pure, eventually becomes complicity. Carl Jung once wrote, "The shadow you ignore will rule you." That isn't just a poetic idea, it's a warning. Because every time we deny the darker parts of ourselves, our hunger for recognition, our desire for control, our secret need to be seen and respected, we hand that power to someone else. You say, "I don't want to play games." You say, "I'm not like them. I just want peace." But that very denial is what allows manipulation to thrive. While you avoid the game, someone else is playing it and using you as a pawn. That's the uncomfortable truth most people never face. The world is not ruled by fools. It's ruled by people who are unafraid to embrace the parts of themselves that others repress. Machiavelli understood this. He didn't write The Prince to glorify cruelty. He wrote it to reveal how easily virtue is defeated when it refuses to understand the nature of power. His point was simple but brutal. If you don't understand darkness, you'll always be at its mercy. Morality without awareness becomes blindness. Wisdom without action becomes weakness. You can be kind, compassionate, and intelligent, and still be powerless if you refuse to confront your own capacity for power, your own shadow. The shadow isn't evil, it's energy. It's the part of you that knows how to assert, to protect, to act with conviction. Deny it, and you become the prey of those who don't. That's what Jung meant when he spoke of individuation, the process of becoming whole. You cannot become whole by rejecting the darkness. You must integrate it. Because whatever you repress within yourself becomes the very thing that controls you from the outside. If you repress your anger, you'll submit to those who express it. If you repress your desire for power, you'll serve those who embrace it. If you repress your capacity for manipulation, you'll be manipulated endlessly. It's not about becoming ruthless, it's about becoming aware. Because awareness is the highest form of defense. Nietzsche called this the will to power, not the hunger to dominate others, but the will to master yourself, to rise above the illusions that enslave ordinary minds. The fool uses power to control the world. The awakened use it to control themselves. That's the difference. That's the line between corruption and consciousness. Power itself is neutral. It's not good or bad. It's like fire. It can destroy or it can illuminate. The danger isn't in the existence of power. It's in the ignorance of those who refuse to learn how to use it. And this is where most intelligent people fail. They confuse humility with weakness. They think being good means being passive, that spiritual growth means detachment from reality. But Machiavelli, Jung, and Nietzsche all whisper the same truth across centuries. Enlightenment means seeing clearly, even the parts of reality you wish weren't true. If you truly want to change the world, you can't fight darkness with denial. You fight it by bringing light into it, by understanding how it works. That's what makes you untouchable. Not your goodness, not your intelligence, but your integration, your ability to stand in the middle of chaos and not flinch. Because once you understand your own shadow, no one can use it against you. You can no longer be guilt-tripped, emotionally blackmailed, or manipulated through fear. You stop living reactively. You begin to move deliberately, strategically, consciously. That's what real freedom looks like, not innocence, but awareness. So don't just be intelligent, be awake. Don't just be kind, be powerful. Don't just be moral, be strategic. Because if you refuse to play the game, you'll always be ruled by those who do. And maybe that's the final tragedy of humanity. Not that fools rise, but that the wise, in their quiet virtue, let them. So here's the lesson, not from Machiavelli alone, but from every thinker who dared to look into the abyss. If you want to create a better world, you must first conquer the one within yourself. Make peace with your shadow. Learn how to use your strength with clarity. Because only when the wise learn to act, not just to think, will the balance of power truly shift. Now I want to hear from you. What part of this truth struck you the most? Have you ever stayed silent in the name of being good, only to watch your silence empower the wrong person? Share your experience in the comments below. I'll read everyone, because your story might be the awakening someone else needs to hear. So here we are. You've seen the illusion unfold, how fools rise, how perception shapes power, and how silence allows it all to continue. But now comes the hardest part, realizing that this isn't just about them. It's about you. It's about every moment you stayed quiet when you knew you should have spoken. Every time you played small, because you didn't want to seem arrogant. Every time you mistook humility for weakness and kindness for obedience. You've been taught to shrink, to be polite, to be good, to avoid conflict. But look where that's gotten the world. The manipulators speak, and the wise stay silent. The corrupt act, and the decent hesitate. And slowly, power shifts, not because evil is stronger, but because good people keep waiting for permission to be strong. Carl Jung said, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain." And that's what this moment is, painful, because awareness always hurts before it heals. It burns away the illusions we cling to, the idea that the world is fair, that truth alone will triumph, that silence is a form of peace. But here's the truth. Silence is only peaceful for those in power. For everyone else, it's a slow suffocation. If there's one thing Machiavelli, Jung, and Nietzsche all agreed on, it's this: the human soul cannot evolve through comfort. It grows through confrontation. Confrontation with the world, confrontation with others, and most of all, confrontation with yourself. You cannot change a world you are afraid to understand. You cannot defeat the manipulator if you still deny your own capacity to manipulate. You cannot create light if you refuse to enter the dark. So the next time you see arrogance rise and truth fall silent, don't just get angry, get aware. Ask yourself, what part of me allowed this? Where did I choose comfort over courage? Because awareness is not passive. It's an act of rebellion. Every time you choose to see, you weaken the illusion. Every time you act with consciousness, you reclaim your power. This is what it means to be awake. Not cynical, not bitter, but awake. To see reality for what it is, brutal, beautiful, complex, and still choose to participate consciously. The world doesn't need more good people. It needs more aware ones. People who know how power works and refuse to be enslaved by it. People who no longer confuse kindness with naivety or silence with virtue. Because true goodness is not passive. It's fierce. It's strategic. It's grounded in truth. So if this video has resonated with you, don't let it end here. Let it disturb you. Let it provoke something deep. Let it remind you that enlightenment isn't about floating above the world. It is about walking through it with your eyes wide open. Remember this, the world isn't destroyed by evil men. It's destroyed by the silence of good ones. And today, you have a choice to remain silent or to awaken. If you've made it this far, you are part of the few who still seek truth beyond comfort. And that already makes you different. Now take a breath, look around, and promise yourself one thing, that from this moment forward, you will no longer be the spectator of your own life. If this message spoke to something inside you, don't just think about it. Hit like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss the next awakening video. And in the comments, tell me, what lesson hit you hardest? What truth will you carry with you after today? I read every comment personally, because every story, every realization, is a spark in this collective awakening. Together, we'll keep pushing the edge, deeper into awareness, deeper into truth, until no illusion remains.